So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're taping here at Cummings Brothers again in Meductic, New Brunswick, one of the best locations of its kind in all the Maritimes. We thank the great staff here for allowing us to tape yet again at one of my favorite locations. Now, we know Meductic and Carleton County region throughout the province, they're big Montreal fans. We're talking this morning a little bit more about Montreal history. Maybe the new generation can never remember, or maybe even the Boston fans don't want to remember. Now, in the 1971 opening round quarterfinal between Boston and Montreal, Boston were coming off a Stanley Cup championship the year before with the great Bobby Orr, Esposito, the whole package, the squad. In game one of the set, Montreal had tried a rookie goalie by the name of Ken Dryden. Now, Kenny had a bad game one in the Boston Garden, losing 5-2. Now, game two turned out to be the turning point for the whole playoffs, because not only did Montreal make a massive comeback in that contest, it probably was the best game the team probably played ever, and that's not understating it. In the words of Henri Richard, it was a comeback for the ages, and that's what people still call it, but you have a different French translation, c'est le comeback. As we say in French, c'est une situation difficile. What happened in the game after Yvon Cornway scored an opening period salvo? Boston scored 5 straight goals on a very shaky Ken Dryden. Bobby Orr did most of the damage. Teddy Green, Johnny McKenzie, Wayne Cashman, all the vedettes of Boston. But here's when the worm turned. After Derek Sanderson put them ahead 5-1 at the 8:41 mark on a pass by Orr and Westphal, Montreal played 7 minutes basically with no composure at all. All of a sudden, that great hero Henri Richard scored a late goal in the second period, an unassisted marker with his patented kind of push-off deke against the Boston starter Johnson. Now, here's the deal. When allegedly, according to published reports, Richard went into the dressing room and basically said, "Hey guys, I scored, we can still come back, it's only 5-2. Now, I don't know if this woke up Beliveau, I don't know if it woke up the rest of the team, but at the start of the third period, it was like the old ghost of the Forum arrived at Boston Garden. Beliveau scored from Cornway and Ferguson on a short play at 2:58. Then he scored his second of the game from Ferguson and Cornway at 4:22, very quick shot. And if you look at the UPN 38, the old tape of the game, the announcers were getting nervous just like Boston was. And all of a sudden, my old pal, who I've interviewed in the past, one of my favorite Habs, Jacques Lemaire, tied it up 5-5 at the 10-minute mark with an unassisted goal. Now, from here, it was 5 minutes of trepidation for the Boston fans. The Garden was pretty quiet. And all of a sudden, that great quality player, John Ferguson, another pass in Beliveau, scored with 4 minutes left. Now, Frank Mahovic's goal summed it up on a breakaway and a slap shot, I think within 20 feet. And when the game was done, like, people literally in the rink were devastated. It was very quiet. All the Montreal fans at home couldn't believe it. Eventually, Montreal kept on momentum, bet Boston in 7 games. They went to the semifinals, bet the Stars in 6, played Chicago, very good team, in 7 games. Chicago was leading 2-0 in Game 7 before Lemaire's infamous blue line shot, which he told me about years ago when I interviewed him for the Canada-Russia series in Campbellton. He said, "Jeffrey, if you shoot, it can go in." And he said, Espo didn't, Tony Espo, he said, didn't expect me to shoot, and he scored. But for any young person out there, girl or guy or whatever, people say you can't come back. If you're dedicated enough to make a comeback in any sport, baseball, hockey, soccer, look at this game. You don't panic when you're behind. If you have a period left or a half left, there's always a possibility you can come back. Now, we always say 2-0 is the worst lead in hockey, in this case 5-2. Now, before there was a Game 6 in '86 between the Red Sox and the Mets, there was a Game 2, Boston and Montreal. If you ask any Boston fan that was alive in '72 to see that as a 20 or 25-year-old, no matter how many Stanley Cups Boston would have won after, which he did, '72, how many finals they make, how many cups Montreal would win, No one expected Montreal Canadiens to be an underdog in any series in the 1970s. Here, I think Boston underrated Montreal. They had some leftover holdovers from the 1950s and 60s dynasty, but they were underrated. And Ken Dryden said it best later on, and he was talking to the Russians, but I think he was talking about his own team. You never underestimate your opponent. If you underestimate your opponent, you don't have the killer instinct, you don't take them off. So if you have a chance, go on YouTube. There's different print and video versions of that game. But to see Montreal score 6 unanswered goals in Boston Garden, Game 2 against Esposito, Orr, Cashman, Sanderson, Eddie Westfall, all the great players in Boston. Johnson in the nets, not as good as Shevers, but that's not an excuse either. He was a quality goalie. Just remember, for everybody that makes fun of Montreal now because, the Leafs are a better team, or Montreal's not Canada's team, Montreal was Canada's team for years because you never knew what was going to happen. You could blow them out, or you could overachieve. You overachieved against the Russians in 75 and 79. They bet Red Army when Tretiak was in there in 79, with Richard 70 of all people. But nowadays, the hockey's a little bit different. Underdog situation, the old Montreal Canadiens, the Flying Frenchman, is not around anymore. If anything, Montreal is just a normal, middle of the road team. So again, Boston fans, sorry we bet you, but if you were meant to win, you would have won. And again, the goals to the form, Richard and Beliveau and Lemaire and Mahovlich must have took them from the form, put them on the train, put them in the Boston Garden, and unveiled them late in that second period. So on this good Friday, not Good Friday, but a great Friday in the Medictic area, we wish you good luck. Keep your stick in the ice. Have you ever beat Jacques Lemaire? Just tell him, you broke the hearts of the Bruins, and I don't know why, but you did it. Congratulate him, because Jacques Lemaire was the most underrated player Montreal ever had, but that's for another podcast. Have a good one.